Hello and welcome back to Movie Remake Time, the Filmmaker's Compass podcast, where we take a look at sequels, reboots, and remakes and ask the very simple question, who did it better? I'm CP. This is my co-host D-Man. D-Man, the world has Batman on the brain.
Yes, they do. And we're about to talk about Batman with nipples. So that's exactly where this podcast is going. You're right. We're taking a look back at the Joel Schumacher Batman era and comparing Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. So I'm pretty excited. If you want to give a little details about the films, kind of preface the transition from Tim Burton into Joel Schumacher and kind of get us up to date on, you know, what happened.
I mean, it's really fascinating. The first one is Batman Forever, 1995. And then, of course, we got, which is, well, the bane of, that's a pun right there, the bane of existence of comic book movies, Batman and Robin from 1997. Both of these are directed by Joel Schumacher, produced by Tim Burton, and Batman films starring two very different actors in the role of Batman, each in one movie, Val Kilmer in Batman Forever and George Clooney in Batman and Robin.
And they got a great ensemble of villains here. So we have Jim Carrey as the Riddler. We have Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face. We have Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy and Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze. So, and I don't know who played Bane, but
the point is, these are some of the biggest actors in the world in the 90s when these movies were made, and legitimate movie stars all around.
Yeah, so we also have Chris O'Donnell as Robin and Alicia Silverstone as Batgirl.
Yep.
So, or Alfred's niece.
Very true. Very true.
So yeah, quite a cast. I mean, there's no denying that Hollywood brought out its A game for these Batman movies. And it is saying something, you know, after Batman with Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson, Danny DeVito, you know, everybody, Michelle Pfeiffer and all that. They had a great run. And then we transition into this much more colorful,
stylized.
Stylized. We got street gangs, you know, like motorcycle gangs and all kinds of stuff. So it's like what's funny though is it's worth acknowledging that Michael Keaton had agreed to come back as Batman for a third movie, but only under the condition that Tim Burton was directing, and he only agreed to produce. So they ended up moving on from Michael Keaton. And I want to say with Val Kilmer, they really didn't miss the mark. I thought he did pretty good, generally speaking. I kind of liked him as Bruce Wayne. He was a little bit more adult, like proper Bruce Wayne. You know, he was, tuxedoed up. And like they showed him, on the job a little bit, which was kind of cool because in Batman and Batman Returns, we don't really ever see Bruce Wayne at like Wayne Enterprises or anything like that. And so it's kind of a nice transition. I thought it worked kind of well.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Clearly Schumacher is doing something very different than what Burton did in these films. But before, like, I just want to be upfront with you and the audience. I have
Always be upfront with me.
I have a little bit of a bias here. I believe I've told you this story before. I remember when I was a kid and I saw the trailer for the Batman Forever movie. I remember I turned to my best friend and I said, that looks like the greatest movie ever made. And well,
you'd seen Star Wars, right?
Once upon as a child, I remember that Batman Forever was, in fact, for a definitive period of time, my favorite movie ever made. So
now, definitive amount of time, are we talking like, a year or like 10 seconds?
Like a year.
Oh, okay. Came to your senses pretty fast. You're like, oh, you know what? It wasn't that good.
So, audience, I have a bias here. I want you to know this. Like, going into this conversation, I am jaded. Point is, Schumacher did something totally different than Burton did. I think it's really weird. We've talked about this beforehand, and on our last episode, Tim Burton was not a fan of comic books in general. Joel Schumacher, on the other hand, was. He was a huge Batman fan and very immersed in the history and the literature and the culture of Batman. So that was part of his motivation for wanting to do these films. as a result, his twist is on, or his take is kind of a twist of what Burton had done cinematically, trying to pull in some of the lighter, more comedic elements of the Adam West era Batman. And
yeah, I mean,
we
you
get
think
these.
the most famous thing from that era is like when he would punch people and it's like pow with the music and it's like
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't quite go to those extremes, but they are, obviously the villains here are a lot more comically zany. Especially you see like these takes on Two-Face and the Riddler. I mean, you have, he has like a, question mark cane, and he's, like throwing his hands in the air, and you have Two-Face who's just super exaggerated in his motions, even in his dialogue, like the way he talks. Comparatively to the previous Batman and Batman Returns, where we're looking at, very dark. I think the Penguin was like oozing black blood and like, he was gross. He's like eating raw fish and biting people, and you're like, this guy's a weirdo.
Yeah.
So
it's almost like these actors are playing for the stage instead of film. They're just so big and animated and eccentric. Very much a shift from what we've seen before.
But I agree. I think it does remind me of that like Adam West Batman era and those villains. Like, who was the Joker? Was it like Cesar Romero? Or
yes.
So they had a great cast of villains for that. I think maybe we'll even get on here and do a total rewind on Batman the movie from way back in the day.
Yeah,
which was actually pretty cool. I remember all the villains like on a submarine. I don't know.
Yeah. We should. That would be fun.
But anyway, the villains, they seem much more in the vein of that era of Batman rather than this kind of darker take. And I think it works to mixed results, I would say. They're definitely memorable, which is a positive. They made their mark, right?
Yeah.
All of them, even, Mr. Freeze and all his puns, they're memorable. There's no way that like, hey, love it or hate it, right? If you've seen Batman and Robin, you remember Arnold as Mr. Freeze. You just can't forget it.
Very true.
So there's that element that works, but it also, I think a lot of times it undermines kind of the dramatic elements of Batman's story arc and what they're actually kind of going for. Because at the end, it's more like just stop the villain, just stop the crazy guy.
Yeah.
They don't tie into these greater themes, and they're not really playing around with, elements the way that maybe the original Batman or like the Dark Knight do, and which is why those are held in such high regard. But in this one, it's kind of like Mr. Freeze is going to like,
get a diamond and freeze all of Gotham.
Yeah. And you're like, we just got to stop them, and you're like, okay, I guess it's, it's that simple. That's what the movie's really about. Batman and Robin, I mean, the plot of the movie is getting everybody on the same page so they'll team up at the end, basically.
Yeah. Very true.
That is the plot. And then the villains have what they want to do, but then it's like, just stop them.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. Another difference is these Batman and these Batman villains have more tech, and it's almost Bondish, right? Yeah. Batman is almost like a James Bond character with the gadgets, and his villains all have these diabolical, destroy the world plot lines that, it's the scope of the show and of the films shifted so much from the previous, where it was grounded a little more.
Yeah. And they do things here that are a little bit, kind of stock. It felt like, where, for instance, I think in both movies, they have those shots of like Batman putting his gear on, like clicking his belt,
the posing
like,
ones.
There's like the posing, and then he like flips his cape around, and then I think in Batman and Robin it like shows his butt.
Yeah.
Things like that, where I was like,
Batman and Robin.
It was supposed to be, I mean, I got the vibe that that's supposed to be the moment, right, where like, hey, we should be getting amped up, but it was more comical than it was like, yes.
It walks this line between being funny and cool and being just cringeworthy. I mean, I always think about, there's a sequence that in the right hands could have been one of the most epic Batman movie sequences that you can imagine. Towards the end of Batman Forever, right? The Riddler has commandeered the bat signal in the sky and turned it into a question mark. And Gordon's getting ready to turn it off because he doesn't think Batman's coming. And all of a sudden, the Batwing bursts through the cloud and dissipates the Riddler. And you're like, this is awesome. And then Batman just in the Batwing turns, gives a thumbs up to Gordon. And it's just, you're like, oh, it's like straight out of a Van Damme movie, man.
That was amazing, though. I mean, and then can we also acknowledge, like, I know Bruce Wayne is a billionaire, but I didn't realize he had unlimited credit. His Batman credit card is good through forever. It's amazing. Oh. I'm like, some of the cringeworthy moments, like I think in Batman and Robin literally fall on their backs when they're on ice and they click their feet and all of a sudden they have ice skates.
Yes.
And then they start ice skating around and playing hockey with a diamond as a puck.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is happening?
Yeah. Oh,
so,
man.
But in a lot of ways, I do have to give, a little tip of the cap because for whatever reason, I am just glad that we have it. Like, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes, we might be hanging out on an evening. It's like, hey, let's open a bottle of wine and let's have a laugh and put on Batman and Robin. Because I don't know. I had the action figures as a kid, right? I had the toy play sets. I mean, I liked the movie as a kid. That's something else.
Toy lines were great.
I think these movies maybe were geared more towards kids.
I think that's right, especially compared to like the Burton one, which had much more darker undertones. These were, we have Robin saying, "Holy rusty metal, Batman." Like, this is clearly for a different type of crowd.
Yeah, like I got the vibe that this was much more like I remember being a kid and it was more fun, even though Batman was always still my favorite. Like it was fun. It didn't feel like it had these adult vibes of, dealing with crime and the underworld. And, even you think of the Penguin's origin story, it's like dark. Like his parents like threw him down a river because he was disfigured. Yeah. You're like, that's like really dark.
Very true. Very true.
And they don't really do all that here. Instead, I felt like, these were the movies that it was like, hey, we can finally get Batman toys in a Happy Meal.
Yeah. True.
And like,
very true.
It'll work. So, it felt like that transformation where it was like, hey, not only do we make, I wanted to know, I didn't realize this, but on the last episode, we were talking about Batman 1989. I said it was a Pepsi commercial. It's actually Diet Coke. I went and looked it up.
Well, thank you for
yourselves. Anthony, my friend who loves Batman, he listened to the episode and he's the one who pointed it out to me. And so I went to YouTube and I was like, all right, I got to verify. And it ends up, it's Diet Coke. And they even do the song at the end, the Diet Coke jingle from like back in the day. And they're like, Diet Coke. Sorry, tangent. But yeah, this felt like, so back then, they have a Batman commercial, but like Diet Coke is Diet Coke. But now it feels like they're going to put Batman's face on the Coke can. Like that's the type of Batman we're getting. Is like, you can market this all over because really it's going towards a different audience. It's going towards kids.
Yeah. No, that's true. I can see that.
So to that end, I think it worked. I liked it as a kid and I still like it now for nostalgia and laughs. But when you hold it up against all the great Batman movies we have now, so these are the bottom ones, I think. Yeah.
No, that's true. And I think it's really easy to get overcritical. I think that there's some things that they do right. I think that one of the interesting, it's obviously these are the only Batman films to really delve into the character of Robin, which probably is part of the reason why most people don't like them. But I actually think that in Forever, the origin story is they do a great job of kind of the juxtaposition between Batman's origin and becoming an orphan and him being in a position where had he revealed his identity, he could have prevented someone else from becoming an orphan. And so Batman, wrangling with that guilt, decides to bring on Robin. Now, as you said, one of the problems is all the other stuff kind of detracts from that. But I think as a story, it's actually really, really well done in that film.
I also want to give a nod to that scene where like Robin becomes an orphan. To Joel Schumacher's credit here, you did feel bad. You were like, ooh, that sucks.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you, is that his, being a part of like a family circus and all that, is that his comic book origin?
For Dick Grayson,
Yeah.
I don't really remember.
I didn't know if that was, made up for the movie or if that was drawing on a specific, character biography from the comics. So just kind of curious, but I thought it worked pretty well. I mean, the whole like being a part of a circus, I thought did lend itself to some of the acrobatics and his ability to be Robin. Yeah. So it wasn't just that he was just some kid and his parents were in a car accident and now he fights crime. It was like, it actually kind of explained a little bit. It doesn't mean you're going to be an excellent fighter, but he should be able then to, use the grappling hook and be comfortable doing that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought that kind of fit well. I liked they kind of, give him a personal adversary in Two-Face.
Yeah, I think that's a great way. And he has the moment at the end of the film where he doesn't follow through with his vengeance and revenge as he plans to, and, takes the road of being a true hero.
Yeah, but then karma comes in anyway.
Every time.
Just make the right call. It'll work itself out. Yeah. So, I mean, overall, like story-wise, I think that relationship between Batman and Robin is the core of Batman Forever, even though there's Nicole Kidman there, which, damn, this cast was amazing. Mm-hmm. And they kind of get into this love story. I didn't really think that worked all that well. I mean, it felt forced. Kind of like, it felt more like studio execs were like, I mean, you got to have a love story.
Yeah.
Like, one's got to be in there. And so it's kind of like, I guess it's there, but like the core of the movie is Batman and Robin, which is ironic because that's the title of the next movie. But I think that's the engine that really makes it work. I think Robin's drive for revenge and vengeance and all that is great because it leans into Batman's own history and his own experiences and trying to guide Robin and be like, hey, I mean, I know if anyone knows, it's me. Yeah. And I'm telling you, it won't help.
No, I think that's great. I think the tie-in with the Riddler's origin, working for Bruce Wayne, I think that is, works pretty well in this movie as well.
So if you flip it over, like I said, I mean, Batman and Robin, then the main storyline is basically like bringing Alicia Silverstone on board and getting that team up moment. I mean, is there really any other story?
I mean,
there's the Alfred thing, which can we acknowledge really quick that I kind of want your opinion here real quick before we move into the storyline for Batman and Robin. Alfred and Commissioner Gordon are the same characters from Batman and Batman Returns. So is this the same shared world?
Yes, it actually is supposed to be the same universe, the same, whatever timeline in the greater DC universe this is supposed to be one world.
Yeah. Okay, just to clarify, because I was like, yeah, and then I mean, for whatever reason, maybe the Harvey Dent we saw in Batman was just another guy named Harvey Dent, the DA.
I know. I think it's supposed to be Billy D. Williams, just not Billy D. Williams.
Yeah, it's just not. So I don't know. But anyway, you get into the storyline for Batman and Robin. I found it to be pretty weak overall. They're repeating now the Robin story, I thought, from Batman Forever, and just kind of passing Batman's role onto Robin, Robin's role onto Batgirl. And
yeah, it's a little much. The villains are so comical and buffoonish that I think one of my complaints is Mr. Freeze is such a complicated character with such great motivations
someone's gonna get it
as
right.
a villain. And I mean, look at the animated film Sub-Zero. Like you see Freeze and we get behind it and it's done so well. And in this movie, Batman and Robin, it is atrocious. He's a joke. None of the motivations are there. His story is watered down and polluted with this Bane storyline and this Poison Ivy storyline. And yeah, it's a real shame.
Yeah. Can we also acknowledge, I don't know why, again, there's the essence of a love story that feels forced, but for some reason they're trying to force this love triangle between Poison Ivy, Batman, and Robin. And to me, the reason it doesn't work is because Poison Ivy keeps blowing this kind of like love Yeah, pheromone or whatever. And so it's not real. You know, like
that and every conversation between Batman and Robin is about how Robin thinks Batman's jealous that Poison Ivy loves him more. And I'm just like, quit being a bitch, dude. This is
I know, like you just can't stand it that somebody would like me more, like to me, there's something about that storyline because she's like doing the love pheromone. I'm like, it's not honest dialogue. That's not how they really feel.
Yeah.
And so it feels contrived. Like, she is messing with them, but I'm like, it just seems like Batman fell for this. I can't believe that.
Yeah, right. You would think he's Batman.
He started giving away his money.
Yeah.
Now, granted, he has that much money that he can, but
I'm not buying
to him, a drop in the bucket. But still, it's like, I don't know. I just could not get on board with that as a serious storyline, as taking it serious. Just didn't really care for it. The whole Alicia Silverstone coming in because Alfred got sick or whatever kind of works. It felt more like they were like, hey, target audiences want to see like a female superhero. And you're like, okay, write that in there.
Yeah.
Rather than
being earned of its own right. And actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't like, it felt derivative of Robin's story from Batman Forever. So I was like, if we just watched that and it kind of worked. And now you ruined it.
Yeah. Like the other thing is, again, I think Joel was trying to do something visually to differentiate himself from Tim Burton. The art direction of the film, the color palette is much brighter. There's smoke, there's neon lights and black lights and gigantic statues everywhere. It's different.
Yeah.
But then in Batman and Robin, it's almost like he's trying to parody Batman Forever and just go to the extreme. There's projections everywhere, and it's like almost too much for you to process as an audience. It's just so outlandish and unrealistic.
Yeah, it almost does become cartoonish. Like at one point, I think Robin he falls into water and Mr. Freeze freezes it. And Robin's literally frozen.
Yeah.
And then Batman just pulls out a thing and is like, I'll thaw him. I don't think that's how that works. That would just create a little hole and go the whole thing glows. I was like, this is very cartoonish.
Yeah.
Can I bring up one of my favorite scenes though? And to me, I don't know who wrote it, but it makes no sense. But it's actually at the beginning of Batman Forever. It's the bank vault robbery. And however they figured this out, they pull a bank vault out of a skyscraper.
With a helicopter.
And apparently the helicopter can support it. Fine. Which, hey, we've seen helicopters, delivering goods and stuff. Not unrealistic in that sense. But where it takes the twist that is amazing is where apparently once the vault is turned sideways, it starts filling randomly with boiling acid.
Not just
you
acid,
get that guy.
Boiling acid.
Yeah, you get that guy and he's like, oh no, it's boiling acid. And you're like, where's this acid coming from? And why would that ever be a safety? I was like, I don't even know. And then he drops his glasses in there and they just disintegrate. And you're like, I guess, honestly, it sounds like somebody in the writer's room was like, yo, we need to take this up a notch. Just throw anything in there. They're like, this thing could start filling with boiling acid. I'm like, where, if it's already empty and there's supposed to be money in the vault, where's the acid even coming from?
Yeah, it's just amazing, really.
No, and then what even gets crazier is however Batman is capable of doing it, he actually gets the vault to fly back into the skyscraper right onto the exact rails that it came off of and save the day.
Only Batman can do it.
Yeah, it didn't even look like there was any more acid in there. So, I don't know. It's just wild. Yeah. So that was always one of my favorite scenes. One of my favorite lines. It's boiling acid. Boiling.
Again, for better or worse, something you bring up all the time. Both these movies are incredibly quotable. I mean, incredibly. There's some funny, fun lines from Forever and some cringe-worthy, hilarious lines from Batman and Robin. I mean, I tried to count Mr. Freeze's puns and I lost count at like 31. But
every line.
You just, one. Yeah, like, so for what it's worth, these movies are incredibly quotable, and have to some extent probably stuck around because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Both of their kind of end game things, like the Riddler and Mr. Freeze, they just felt cartoonish to me. They felt like an episode of a Saturday morning serial. Like, oh no, Mr. Freeze is here. Well, what's he gonna do? Of course, he's gonna freeze Gotham. And you're like, why? I have no idea.
Yeah,
you know?
Right.
And so that type of stuff to me, I was like, I don't know. You know, it's not very strong. It's very, very basic writing. Like, hey, we just need a problem. Well, what character can we get? We can get Arnold to be Mr. Freeze. And you're like, all right, then we'll freeze Gotham. Like, and then let's face it, I'm not even gonna lie. When they do freeze Gotham, those effects are not great. They do not hold up well. It looks
so bad.
Like some of the ice is like literally, it looks like it's like, you know, I don't know, made of something, not ice. It's like moving. I'm like, no, this is just terrible.
No. All right, shifting gears. One of your other favorite subjects when we're evaluating films, the music. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that we have to give as a point in the favor of Batman Forever is the Seal song "Kissed by a Rose."
Yeah, I mean that still gets played.
Probably
I still hear that on the radio.
More famous than the movie itself. And I don't really know why it was made for Batman Forever, but hey, it's a great song. Seal, you killed it.
I wanted to tell you this. I actually did think about this prior to this episode, and this happened to me not the other day, but probably like 3 months ago. I was in the car, and they played. I forget what radio station. I wish I could give them a shout out here, but they played Seal, "Kissed by the Rose," and then right after that, they played MC Hammer, "Can't Touch This," and I was like, "This is amazing." Like these songs were good enough that they still get played in 2021, 22. Like
it is pretty amazing.
And it was amazing that they both got played for me for my own, you know, listening pleasure on the same car ride.
That's pretty sweet.
That's pretty wild. Yeah.
What did you think
just played R. Kelly's "I Believe I Can Fly"? I'm like, would have freaked out.
What did you think about the Batman theme in this movie?
It works. I don't think there's anything to me. There's nothing that stands out as like wholly negative about it. The same way I think we talked previously about, you know, my reaction to the theme in Judge Dredd, where I felt the in that movie for the, you know, post-apocalyptic type world they're going for. I felt the theme was a mismatch, and it didn't lend itself to the credibility of the story they were trying to tell. And here, I don't think it really detracts from it, but it's not all that memorable either.
Why do you think they went away from the Burton Batman theme? Which, I mean, if this is a shared universe, you know, I would have thought they would have just continued with the Batman theme.
Maybe they should have, because that one is iconic. That one does stick with you. That's the one that most people associate with Batman. Mm-hmm. Even after, you know, there was, you know, Nolan movies had a pretty solid score. They were able to, you know, reintroduce their own kind of musical, you know, tones and all that to their movie, but it works really well, especially in Batman Begins and Dark Knight. But yeah, here it felt like it fits, but it's just not that memorable. So yeah, I mean, maybe if it was me, maybe I would have stuck with that, but because visually, you know, effects wise and even thematically, they were making such a dramatic change from those, they just didn't want to carry that music over. Could have been as simple as that.
Okay, that's fair enough.
But it didn't ruin the movie for me. I mean, it still works. It still felt like Batman.
Yeah, it's epic in nature, and when it plays, it's at the right times, that it's heroic. I mean, listen, other than that, I got to kind of ask you really two major questions.
Sure, let's do it.
Which Batman / Bruce Wayne was better? I mean, because George Clooney is probably, out of all the people that ever played Batman, the biggest star.
And the irony is, I do think, I don't remember if I ever actually saw the interview, but I heard he gave an interview where he actually like apologized for the movie.
Yeah.
I guess for him, it was a big payday, and I'm sure it was cool to play Batman. I mean, why would you say no to that?
Yeah.
It just didn't work out very well. I think Val Kilmer does a much better job in terms of he looks great in the bat suit, and I thought he played a better Bruce Wayne, in my opinion. So I liked his dynamic of bringing in Wayne Enterprises, his interactions with Edward Nygma, and his ability to mentor Robin. I think that all works much better. The only element that I thought George Clooney really brought that I enjoyed was I did feel like he really cared about Alfred.
That's a good point.
So,
that's valid. I would agree.
That was something, but it was weird because they had the same Robin and then George Clooney. I was like, man, I don't know. I felt like Val Kilmer and Chris O'Donnell had maybe a better.
So I was reading about that, and apparently Val Kilmer and Joel Schumacher did not have the best working relationship. At the same time, Val Kilmer was already contractually obligated to another film, so it was just like, more kindling on that fire. So that's why they had to cast someone, and they went with Clooney because they thought he could lighten up the role a bit. Another thing that I found was fascinating is apparently Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey hated each other and did not get along at all when they were making that movie, which is weird because you don't see that. They have great chemistry together as this villain duo. And I guess so much to the point that Joel Schumacher swore that he would never make a movie with either of them ever again after.
Wow. Oh, I did not know that. That's actually pretty crazy. Yeah. And especially because those guys obviously have had great careers on their own. So, I mean, you would think if they were, that hard to either get along or work with, that would be something that maybe would, made the tabloids or maybe affected their ability to get future work. And maybe it did slightly if Joel Schumacher, had gone on to make, Christopher Nolan style movies. But
yeah,
I don't know. That's just weird because, I mean, on screen, they're very zany, fun. I mean, they get pissed at each other, but in a, like you said, it's good chemistry in a good way.
Yeah. And it works. So I always thought that was odd. The other thing I had to ask you is this.
Yeah.
At this point, we now have each movie has a very different Batmobile. Which one did you like better? And I don't know if you thought about it until this moment, but
I'm glad you brought that up too, because there's a lot of Bat vehicles in both these movies, which was kind of fun.
Yeah.
And I think I got to go with the Batman Forever Batmobile. And that's because I had that as a toy as a kid.
I always had a soft spot in my heart too. I always liked that one.
Yeah, it's actually pretty dope. I mean, it's very stylized. It's very comic booky, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, it is a comic book movie, and they went for, that kind of stylized, cartoonish feel. And the Batmobile is very representative of that. But it actually, within the context of the world we're looking at, I think it works pretty good.
It's got the big fins. It's got the flames out the back. It can drive up the side of buildings. Yeah,
I know. Oh my God. Jeez, what's with Batman and having vehicles like go up the sides of buildings?
I don't know. That was always a weird thing. But yeah, I wanted to know your thought because,
Well, what do you think? You're going Batman Forever?
Yeah, I have to. If you remember for one, in Batman and Robin, he actually doesn't drive the Batmobile nearly as much as he does in Batman Forever, where there is that chase scene with Two-Face where he's in the Batmobile and he turns the wheels so he can, drive out of the way of the missile and stuff. So,
oh my God.
And second of all, the Batman and Robin one has this weird kind of like glowing underframe thing going on.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was just, I wasn't as much of a fan of it, but I thought that the Forever one felt like a comic book vehicle and it worked. Again, in this sort of James Bond version of Batman, I thought it worked really well.
Okay. And then I wanted to ask you one question. I mean, what are your thoughts on that epic moment where Batman, Robin, and Batgirl are all coming down the street in their vehicles and they're going to take on Mr. Freeze? I mean, that was amazing.
Oh,
yeah. Sarcasm is a thing,
Oh my God, dude.
It was, dude, this is like Avengers before Avengers. Like, no.
I just, again, like, and again, like there's a cheekiness to kind of the similar moment in Batman Forever where Batman takes the Batwing and Robin takes the Batboat, and like they're both going through, and that I'm just like, I don't know what you guys were thinking, but you apparently weren't.
I mean, I feel like they just needed that shot for the trailer. They're like, just make sure everyone knows this is what's going to happen, and then people will come see it.
Well, and it's kind of, and I assume that's it. If you remember, the trailers for each movie ends with the same scene that the movies end with, where Batman and Robin in Forever run, into the light, and they do the same thing in Batman and Robin with the three of them. And I guess that's just it. They were like, hey, we need to put these in a trailer so people go to the movies. So whatever you got to do, shoot it and use it.
Well, that makes sense.
Well, I mean, listen, we've talked through, I think everyone knows what we're thinking, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Batman and Robin, Batman Forever. What's your pick?
So I want to give a big thanks to just Joel Schumacher for making these movies, because I still enjoy them. Maybe not, in the most, critical study of way, but it is still fun to watch them. And it was fun to watch them again. So which one did it better? I mean, obviously I think Batman Forever is the better movie, but I'm going to give my vote to Batman and Robin.
Ooh,
I think it has more rewatchability in its silliness, in its cartoonishness. I will admit that I have watched Batman and Robin, and I haven't watched. Between my childhood and now, I've watched Batman and Robin more.
Okay, all right.
So I mean, clearly, Batman Forever is a better movie. I think it has a better story. I think the Batman's better. I think the Batmobile is better. I think almost everything about it is like technically better. And yet there's something about the cartoonish goofiness and zaniness of Arnold as Mr. Freeze, and me just enjoying a beer being like, this is great.
Fair enough. You know what I'm gonna say? No, it's fine. Boom. I gotta go Batman and Forever. I told you as a kid, this was at one point in my experience as a filmmaker, the greatest movie ever. And while it is not, and it does not hold up in even as the greatest Batman movie by any means, there's a soft spot in my heart. It is something different than any other Batman movie, and I think what Schumacher was trying to do works better in this one. This slightly television, inspired with noirist elements. It holds up, and it creates an interesting interpretation on Batman.
Yeah, I agree. I think Batman Forever definitely is the more, if Joel Schumacher was like, listen, I'm going to make a Batman movie. Batman Forever is much closer to that vision. Batman and Robin is, like you said, it's almost parodying itself. And it's just going for this totally different vibe, almost such over the top silliness. But that can be fun, and I enjoy it.
Now, I don't know if you ever heard this, just tangenting it again. When Schumacher passed away a few years ago, there was a movement to release the Schumacher cut of Batman Forever, which is apparently his director's cut, all the stuff that the studios cut out, which apparently was a little bit more in terms of exploring the character of Batman and Robin and their relationship. I mean, if Warner Brothers would do it, I think that would be amazing. Because again, I would be really curious to, see where.
I think Warner Brothers
we could have had.
Listen, we gave you guys the Snyder cut, so shut up.
We're never giving you anything ever again.
Yeah, we're never doing any of that. I mean, now everybody's trying to restore the Snyderverse, so I'm like,
and they want him to release the Ayer cut. So yeah, who knows, man?
I don't know, but it would be cool to see, definitely, just because I know directors. We look back at like Superman 2, the Donner cut. You look at Blade Runner. Sometimes the studios meddle, and to a detriment, because sometimes the directors are like, hey, this vision is just that little bit better. But if they really do have the footage, it's kind of fun to watch both and then compare them. Yeah. I mean, we got a whole podcast about it. So if they do it, right, we'll compare.
Well, on that note, I don't have anything else to say about the Joel Schumacher Batmans.
Well, I guess, at this point, we'll go ahead and throw it out to our audience, everybody listening. Which one do you think did it better? Which one do you like better? And, if they could release, another cut, would you guys be interested in seeing it? So send us your thoughts, comment on the social media posts. Like I said, be sure to leave us a review, 5-star review if you can, if you really think, we're that good, which we are. Leave us a 5-star review, help us rank a little bit higher, but you can find the podcast on all the major podcast directories, as well as all the social media and links at filmmakerscompass.com. So keep the conversations going. I love hearing from you guys. Anthony, big shout out. Glad you listened, and, appreciate your commentary on Batman, since I know you're a huge fan. And everybody else, we're looking forward to hearing from you guys. And if you haven't yet gone to see the Batman, maybe go check that out too. And we might be discussing that in some form in the future.
Yeah, so at least in 30 years we will.
Yeah, keep an eye out. And on that note, you can follow me at Big Kid D-Man. You can follow Christian at NDCal5. So we're always active on social media, in our own personal spaces, but we have fun discussions, and we'd love to, get into some heated debates with everybody. But other than that, CP, I'm going to throw it over to you. Go ahead and take us out.
On that note, thank you for hanging out and talking about, everybody's favorite 2 Batman movies, because we love Batman and need more of it in our lives. We will see you back here next week. Until then, keep watching movies.